How you doing? This is Puerto Rican Queen, bringing together between the rich and the poor, coming from the great state of Texas. And I'm here today with the amazing Molly Elmore from Bound Hill Capital. Go Texas and go Georgia. And before we start, please, if you're new to the channel, subscribe, comment, and share. And let's show how you initially became involved in cryptocurrency investments and what drew you to this space.
Sure. So I actually got into this not really wanting to make money or because I was interested in investing. What happened is I was a business coach and I was helping my clients sell and market products that they produced. And I was also growing my own coaching business. And my clients and I kind of had some emotional self-worth issues tied up into money. Basically, we were all having a hard time charging what we needed to be charging and should have been charging, and others were charging, but for some reason, I struggled with this and I had a whole bunch of clients who did. And it was a problem. So I was kind of seeking a solution to this sort of more like psychological problem, to be honest. So I asked around some coaches I know, and someone suggested to me, what they said was, if you really understood and knew how money is created and the scam that the money system is, you would not let your own feelings of worth be tied up into this stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, this was 5 years ago, I guess.
Oh my God, seriously? So you were like completely unaware of the fractional reserve banking system where there's no money in the banks, and the Ponzi scheme that we have in this country, people don't really even know about, right?
Yeah, I had no idea. And I'd never really thought about it. I hadn't really cared about it. I hadn't questioned it. I just wasn't something that I was taught in school, and it wasn't something that had come up in my corporate career where we didn't really question the financial system. So anyway, this person said the way to figure this out is to go read this book called The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Jekyll Island, yes.
And it's a monster of a book. I actually listened to it on audiobook. It was 24 hours. It was like quite an experience, blew my mind. It covers way more than just the money system, but it really does explain, going back a couple of hundred years, this sort of small group of people who have attempted to control most of us through managing the money system. And this idea of central banking and how some pretty famous people kind of behind the banking system over the last couple of hundred years have orchestrated like presidential assassinations and started wars. And it was a hard book for me to be like, is this all true? Like, are you serious? Like, everything that I have believed about our world is very, very different. So once I kind of got through that, my next sort of thought was, well, if this dollar thing is a total mess, what is a better option? Like, we can't just not have money. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, people are talking about all these crypto things. I don't really know much about it. I hadn't had any interest whatsoever in Bitcoin or anything related. But at that time, I now felt like, okay, my curiosity is now off the charts because this money thing is crazy. There has to be a better way. And so I actually joined a coaching program. I was, was very active in that world. So I knew coaches who pretty much offered anything you could be taught, and found one from a friend who was teaching crypto stuff. Now, this was several years ago. I was like the only woman in the program. It was very like, they were nice guys, but very young, like into gaming, kind of techie side, and very, very passionate about the crypto like philosophy, that it was a money of the people. And we were kind of like going to take our power back and be our own bank, and kind of all of these are very cool, almost libertarian type views. And that is what kind of got me into this. It was really trying to figure out what is the issue with money. So though you're in a coaching program, they're always wanting you to make money so that you can pay to stay in the coaching program. That's kind of a basic business model of coaches. So they were like, all right, well, you should buy these things. They're going to go up in value. And I like to make infographics. So I started to make infographics on all of the major change, just as a way for my own, like, understanding something if I can teach it to someone else.
Yes, that makes sense.
And so I asked the coaches in the program, because I shared them in the group when they were done. And I kind of had gone through sort of in a random order, and they were suggesting, oh, next you should do Luna, next you should do Phantom. And I kind of got to XRP, and I'm like, what about XRP? They're like, no, skip that one. We don't like that one. That's the banker's coin. And I was like, okay. So I didn't think to question them. So I get down to number 10 and I'm done. But I was like, I had this sort of little like itch, OCD itch. I'm like, I can't do all of the top 10 except XRP. So I'm like, I'll just do it out of like the interest of being complete. And I started to research XRP. Now, at this point, I had a system for how to uncover all the info I needed to know to describe a blockchain and explain why this layer one was different than another one. And, what was its sort of little unique selling proposition that it was using in the marketplace. I'm a marketer, so I was really looking at these, like, how are these blockchains marketing themselves and differentiating themselves so that they can win, right? Because not everybody's going to win. And sometimes the tech is good, but the marketing has to be good too. Otherwise, people won't find it. So I had this whole system, and I go through my steps. And now in my mind, like, these blockchains are all almost the same. They just have their own little like special sauce or special flavor. But I get to XRP and I immediately find two things. One is the buyback, and two is ETHgate. And I was like, hold the train. Like, none of the other blockchains have a scandal in them that I had found. And I was like, this is fascinating. And I was like, why would anyone buy back? Like, didn't even know that phrase. I didn't know that it ever happened in other instances. And I was like blown away. And interestingly, pretty early on, I had read 2 books by a woman named Linda P. Jones, and she has a podcast as well called Wealthy and Smart. And I was listening to it every day. I was very into it. And one day she has Jimmy Valley on, who's now my business partner. It's funny. This is like years ago.
Wow.
And he's talking about sort of this thesis he had that sort of the banking system had planned to use XRP, but there's sort of NDAs. And if you are making a deal like that, where all these entities are going to agree to transact using this asset, the first and most important thing they're going to have to agree on is the value of this asset. He said they're not going to go and plan major technical infrastructure changes without this really important thing, which is how much is it going to cost to buy one of these tokens that are going to be used to transfer value. And so I was kind of blown away by this. And then, that is kind of part of the buyback. But the other thing that relates to that is this idea of ETHgate, and that there was sort of a collusion to slow down the private company Ripple from gaining market share with a series of financial services products that they'd been developing to replace kind of the correspondent banking system and some of the more kind of technically outdated mechanisms for communicating payments and that kind of thing. And this was sort of what ETHgate was about, that there was this effort to use the government to kind of give the monopoly an advantage because they like being on the top of the hill and they don't particularly want anyone to come along and dethrone them. And so the buyback was really an attempt to bring light to that corruption. And it was misunderstood by a lot of people and created a very polarized situation.
Oh my God. Yes.
Where you have like
Rector,
who are like
getting TikTok of, fights between Zach Rector and all of us that we were like, I don't know about that. Because we didn't understand that the buyback was about the fair value of XRP. It was very polarizing, and it's still very, very polarizing today.
So the buyback was an attempt to say, hey, government, if you're trying to be sneaky and pull a fast one and force us to give up this asset, you're going to at least have to pay top dollar for it. What is top dollar? It is what's considered in economics and in finance the fair market value, which is what this asset would be worth in a variety of conditions, like, in ideal conditions.
The fair market value PDF that I read, and depending on the model, the economic model that you use, it will be how much it will be the value, how much value will come into the blockchain, right? That's how I understood the.
Right. So the first thing that happened was Jimmy had released this financial document called the terms, and that became known as the buyback. And this was the beginning of a negotiation between a group of XRP holders that was still not clearly defined who would those be, and the counterparty, which might have been the central bank of the United States, the Fed, or it might have been the government. Like, it was unclear. Could have been JP Morgan, saying that, we believe that we were harmed from this. And you should compensate us by paying us fair market value. The next question, though, is, well, what is that fair market value? How do you determine that for this type of an asset? It really hasn't been done before. So several months later, a group of us, kind of under Jimmy's leadership, built a series of 6 different valuation models, and each of them was different, and they were looking to understand the effect of certain market conditions. There were simulations. So like, if these conditions were present, what would the price be? If those conditions were present, what would the price be? And it gave us a whole range, because we were forecasting out trying to simulate the price out to 2030. We don't know what the future is going to be like. So we had to sort of say, if this lawsuit had not happened and the XRP ledger had been allowed to kind of grow without the shade of this like tarnished brand, what could the value have been? And we wanted to see what the range was, knowing that some were very extreme situations on either side.
Well, yeah. So I have a question about that, because a lot of us, and I say this all the time, and I don't know if you agree with my statement, cash is trash. Trying to take something that is so valuable and pair it against a Ponzi scheme, a debt, a liability, it just doesn't make any sense, right? For me, it doesn't make any sense. Did you guys thought about that, about maybe pooling, trying to get the value, the fair market value of XRP, not connected to the dollar, but maybe something that is real valuable, like gold, or because we call XRP gold, then we call XLM silver. Does that make sense of what I'm asking?
Are you referring to the buyback? Like, if it was bought back, what currency?
Yes, because the dollar is just nothing, really. It's just, it's artificially inflated by our government. We don't have really a free market at all. People think we have a free market. So comparing XRP to the dollar, right? To say that XRP is from 10,000 to, was it $350,000, the highest? Doesn't make sense to me. I understand what you guys were trying to do, but like, pair it with something that is real valuable.
Okay, so you're mixing up a couple of things. So the valuation models were built using dollars, because that's how
I did that.
I needed a way to price it, because if you start talking to me about price of something in Bitcoin or whatever, I don't think in Bitcoin. So like, I don't know what's a lot of money in Bitcoin or whatever. So in this case, we priced everything in dollars so that we could understand academically like what was going on. But should the buyback have gone forward, which it did not at this time, has not at this time, no one was asking to be compensated on the other side of the exchange in dollars. That was still unclear. It was like, all right, so if you're gonna, so here's the thing too, there was a buyback of gold in the United States in 1933. Americans were forced to sell their gold.
Yep.
And if you didn't, you like got in lots of trouble. And then another token in the sort of digital assets world, the Very token owned by Reggie Middleton, there was a buyback by the SEC. So like, this stuff happens. And the question though is, if an entity, whether it's the government or something else, did force a buyback, we also want to make sure we've had time to discuss, well, what do you want to be paid in? Because you're right, nobody wants to be paid in dollars. It's a sinking ship. Well, what's a better alternative? Do you want tokenized gold? Do you want bars of gold? Do you want
gold? Gold for me. I mean, something that is what was before, which was the gold standard, right? Before Nixon took us out of the gold, we had a currency that was worth something, was backed by something, and now it's backed by nothing. So for me, it's changing one XRP to $1 as an example, just as an example. It's like putting it in the trash, really. But I understand you guys have to use something that people understand. And I don't think any of us that understand really what XRP can do really want money. So what I'm saying is, have you guys thought of maybe putting it in another, like thinking about gold instead as the currency that maybe people will want, because it's something that is tangible, it goes up. Yes, it's not gonna be as high as the real price of XRP, but it's something tangible.
It's just not really a relevant thing right now because we are not, no one is negotiating, as anyone that I know, with any counterparty to exchange their XRP. So that would be, I mean, that was the other thing that people misunderstood in the deal terms that Jimmy created. They were like the first step in a probably 100-step negotiation. It was like, all right, I got to put something on the table for you to react to. So he had included in there an ESDR, which is kind of a combined weighted currency. But that was just like an idea. I mean,
so the government was never involved, because you know what?
Never.
There's a lot. I had to ask because there's so many rumors going around the buyback and why people were so angry. Most people were against it. So there was never, because it seemed like there was some kind of negotiation between the government or the Federal Reserve or whatever you want to say with the people that were in the board of the fair market value board or table or whatever you want to call it.
I think you think we're more connected than we are. So
well, that was what's going on. That was the rumors going around in the XRP community. I mean, you heard it, right?
I've kind of stopped paying attention to a lot of that noise because it, you know, a year and a half ago when we actually it was last summer, we put out that paper. You know, that was quite a ride, to put it mildly. There was I took a lot of heat for that. There was a lot of criticism and a lot of accusations that were just completely inaccurate related to like what you just mentioned. So at this point, I'm kind of like, I've said many times, like what really happened. If you don't want to listen or you want to just make up whatever you want to make up, have fun. Like I can't really try to find all the people who've misunderstood the intentions and how things have happened. Listen to any of us speak publicly on a podcast and you will get the truth. If you're going to get your information from a third party YouTube type influencer who doesn't like it, you're learning from their interpretation, which I've seen it with many critics, is just factually inaccurate. Like the information is not correct. Anyway, so
I totally agree. So basically you're saying that to turn off the noise, you were like, I'm done listening to any kind of anything at all about that subject, because people are going to believe whatever they're going to believe and they're not going to listen, basically.
In the many attempts where I've tried to set the record straight, they just end up coming back like accusing me of made up stuff, and it's not even a conversation. They just seem to like want to. Like,
I believe what you're saying. I'm a person that came from a very tough background, and I can read people. And you're saying the truth. You're not trying to make up something, invent something. But I mean, our community is very, very. We are ultra. We love XRP. We're gung ho about it, and so I understand why some people are like, happened with XRP. With a case, we're still waiting for the settlement. How much is going to be? It seems that it's going to be a lot of money for what. And I'm saying it seems because there's so many rumors that you don't know what is real and what is true anymore. And we got the AMM that just started not that long ago, and there was some kind of issues. Can you comment a little bit on those things, and what do you think about that?
So software is going to be built regularly in this ecosystem. And sometimes software is buggy. So when you launch it, you test it for a while. So I find it odd too that people who are not really the intended users of the AMM seem to be very upset that like there was bugs and that kind of maybe took a while to be approved and that kind of thing. I kind of very long for a while held the thesis that while it's great that we own XRP and maybe you and I, if we had businesses, we would exchange value with XRP. But the real transformation here is kind of what got me into the space in the first place, and that globally, the dollar system is crashing. The dollar system has been very unfair, really, to every other country outside of like the Western banking cartel countries. So Africa, South America, East Asia, like China, like they've not been treated very well by the dollar system. And those nations are like, we're done. We need a new thing. Like this
Bricks,
is
right? Bricks.
so to me, like when people get upset that like there aren't more gaming projects on the XRP ledger, or you and me who are just retail investors or like we're out there using the AMM, that's fine. You can play around all you want and have fun, like treating this kind of like a toy or your little personal like casino speculating moneymaker thing. But what's really at play here is far bigger than any of us as individuals. And I'm here to watch like the entire global financial system heal from this cancer of the dollar system. And so this is why I don't really go to like Twitter spaces where people are bitching about stuff, because most of those conversations are missing the big picture, and that we're at a period in history where we could collapse and into World War III and just everybody, we end up in like a feudalism situation where you have these sort of like powerful people in charge and the rest of us treated like slaves. Or we could be on the other side where all of a sudden now we break free of this crazy money system and we can have global peace and have a level playing field to pursue our own opportunities. That stuff is far more exciting to me.
Yes,
The
yes.
price of XRP today, or what new builders are doing, whatever. I mean, build all you want, but like the big play here is about the global financial system moving away to the dollar, and to what is it going to move to? XRP is a really good solution to a bunch of the problems. Ripple's got those relationships lined up. I mean, we're there. And I find that sometimes the XRP holder communities who aren't paying attention to this macro political issue, they're focused on the wrong thing. I mean, this is why the buyback, like, this is why they sued XRP. This is why XRP is a big deal, is that like all the money in the global financial system is at stake here. And that's like, to me, an exciting and massively huge topic, which is why the AMM will be a necessary technology platform to enable like nations to trade with each other and banks to move money to other banks, like very large institutions that move a lot of money. You don't like want to do that on a platform that isn't solid and isn't working. And so
exactly. So it has bugs like Ethereum, right? There's a hack every other day. I mean, stuff like that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I agree with you that there's bigger things in play. And we're in a crux right now. We're in a fork of the road. Are we going to CBDCs and it's going to be like, oh, the government controls everything? Well, not that they don't control everything right now, but like where they have actually a look into your banking situation every second of the day. Or are we going to go to, hey, we got our whatever, like, but we have to get out of the system. And I think you and I agree with that. We don't know how that's going to look like, right? It's like, it seems like there's so many things at play, right?
There's a couple things about CBDCs. One, I think it's a misleading label for potentially where we're going, because it just implies like a centrally issued currency. Now, if it's done by the central bank, that's a private company that's sort of being outsourced money production. If we had a US Treasury issued digital currency, which is very likely, that might functionally be looked at like a CBDC. Now, there's two types of CBDCs: a wholesale CBDC, which is how banks send money to other banks. We already have a wholesale CBDC, and no one cares about that. The retail CBDC is the issue. And the question would be, if the government or a third party like the central bank were to issue a currency and use smart contract functionality to have rules around what you could or couldn't do with it, that scares people. And I get it. But there's a couple things. One, we already have like WIC, food stamps type things. We already have money that is given by the government, and there's rules and conditions about what you can buy for it. So that's not a totally new concept. The issue would be, now, if the government wanted to send me, let's say they wanted to send me $1,000 every month, and they were like, you can only use this money to buy food, I'd be like, all right. The issue is whether or not they could make the CBDC the only money you can use. Because if you want to have some
Yes,
soft money that
yes,
people get free stuff
exactly.
on, all right, whatever. I mean, there's other issues on that topic, but this sort of fear around CBDC is only important if it's the only money you can use. Because if you've got your shitty surveillance money that you're giving me to buy groceries, all right, fine, I'll use it to buy groceries. But like all the other stuff that I do in my life, I'm going to do with whatever money I choose. And right now we can choose to if I want to pay all my employees in XRP, if I want to pay, you know, now the issue is that if I'm paying bills or whatever, I have to pay bill and whatever the issuer of the bill wants to get paid in. We don't have ODL for like the power bill, right? So I can't send my whatever XRP into the the power bill marketplace and they get paid in dollars, whatever. So
retail is the problem. A retail controlled.
The problem would be is if the government figured out a way to make that money the only money you could use.
And I think people are rightly concerned because we got, what did China do before they pushed their
China has a CBDC, but it's not working out very well. Like the adoption rates have been very low.
Didn't they actually basically ban crypto first before they did that? And then we got, I think it was Nigeria that decided one day, hey, you can't use that cash anymore. And there was some kind of chaos there. I don't know if that was true or not, but I don't know, like, should we be concerned? Do you think our government will do something like that? If they took gold as an example or whatever, is it possible that they can actually take our XRP? I think that's another thing that a lot of people are worried, because technically we were never supposed to have XRP, right? We are retail investors. Retail investors were never supposed to be part of that, right? I mean, that's how I understand it, right?
I don't know if that's the case as much as when you build a new blockchain and you're going to spend 10 years testing it, you encourage people to play around on there and maybe build some gaming projects or whatever to make sure all the rails work. And you keep the price low so that everybody can set up a trust line and play around on there. And you can practice, develop this XRP army, have them be moving money around using it so that you have 10 years of being sure that all this technology works and there aren't sort of bugs that could have been uncovered. So I don't know if it's that retail holders were never supposed to have it. I think we've been the good testers of the network. But I don't think that it was built primarily for peer-to-peer transactions.
Exactly.
I'm going to take that back. I think it was built for entity-to-entity transactions without having to go through a central third party like a bank. So that's, Brian Brooks has said this publicly. Crypto is not a threat to money. Crypto is a threat to the banking system. Crypto seeks to replace commercial banks. And that is why you have all this resistance from the banking cartel, who is very influential, particularly in the United States, why we don't have regulations, why they're slowing everything down, because they know the minute the green light goes forward, unless the old banking monopoly has ownership of the new thing, they're literally going to become obsolete. And that's scary for them. I don't begrudge them that fear. I think they're organized crime and they've been lying and manipulating and doing horrible things in the effort of growing their business. But you realize banking, like, it's not really a necessary thing in a modern world. I want to answer your question before, though. This is important. So you said, in 1933, they did a gold buyback and everybody kind of participated. Could they do that again? I'm absolutely certain, no, they could not, for one reason only, which is the internet. If back in 1933, everybody was telling everybody else, hey, don't go selling your gold, they're trying to pull a fast one or whatever, there might have been a lot more people who resisted and said no. Where now, with how quickly information is distributed, the government couldn't even pull off Obamacare. Like, they're just a mess. They're organized crime. They don't have to instill, they don't know what they're doing. They're just a bunch of mobsters who got into positions of power and wear better outfits maybe than the Italian mob does. But that doesn't mean they're good at doing anything. So this idea they're going to implement this incredibly sophisticated social credit score system tied into the money and the health system and all these other things, and have this be the most incredible database in the history of databases. You think the organized crime syndicate of the US government has any ability to manage something of that scale? That's why I'm just not worried about it. I just don't think they're good enough.
But that's true, because look at our US debt. And let's be real, is that the only debt that we have? Because it's a lot of things that we don't know that
The
they do
one thing
under.
they are good at, they are very good at marketing. And they create
Oh
this idea
yeah,
that it is our debt. I'm like, that's not my debt. I didn't take out those loans.
no, me neither.
Why am I on the hook for our national debt? So that I think is another clever play on words. And I think honestly, they're just going to hyperinflate the dollar and make it all go away.
Yeah. This is perfect segue to the question that I told you was going to ask you on personal sovereignty, because you mentioned that, hey, basically, if the government's the money is completely gone, in the sense of, because it seems like every year there, I think a lot of people don't understand that inflation was created by whom. It's not something that is really, it just happens. It's a hidden tax that they have. So connected to that, to the system on personal sovereignty and the context of digital finance and the importance for individuals in today's world. What do you think about that specific thing?
I did go down this rabbit hole like a year or so ago. I have a couple of views. One, I'd rather the organized crime syndicate be removed from power than me try to play some kind of game where I try to live outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in a log cabin for 10 years in the middle of the woods. Like, you can choose to sort of exit the system and just live by yourself, and no one really cares. The government, I don't think, is even really going to give you a hard time if you just want to leave. The problem with being your own country, essentially declaring your sovereignty, is, well, what if you own a business and you employ people? That's a problem.
Okay.
What if you like have a type of a job where you're like a doctor or a teacher or a nurse, and you kind of, in order to do your job the way you want to do it, you have to be connected into this. It's great. So being your own sovereign is great if you choose to have a very isolated life, which people are welcome to do that. I just know that my own personal mission and my own kind of goals at this time like require that I could go to an event where I have to like show a driver's license.
Exactly.
Or like I still want to
take
fly
an airplane, right? And you need
I
to
gotta get on a plane. Like now, when our XRP is worth a lot of money and maybe a group of us start our own country and we have our own banking system and we have our own plane, that's going to be a very different situation because now resources will be there to set this up. So I still do continue to learn about the idea of being your own bank and what would it mean to have like I don't really want to start my own country by myself. That I would just be bored and lonely, I think. So, but if it was a group of people that I knew and we all were like, hey, we could do this together and kind of pool resources or whatever, that to me is a little bit of a different conversation. And where
it's true. I mean,
the thing about do the state national route is you kind of have to play what I call matrix games, where you have to acknowledge that this organized crime syndicate that's illegal, you have to pretend that it's real, and you send these like affidavit letters, and if they don't get
NDAs, right?
Right. Yeah. And so you're sort of enabling the matrix, this made up scam. You're trying to like find a little loophole, but the whole thing is ridiculous. And this company that is now the US corporation, like it's all gotta go. So I'm not really spending any time trying to figure out how to get out of that organized crime thing, because I think it's all just going to be erased. And we
it's a house of cards. And we're seeing it slowly unfold. And it seems like, well, the slowly is becoming faster because they think they can control the inflation they created with their tools, right? With their tools. I'm sorry.
I don't really take anything they say all that seriously because I'm like, you're like the mob. You're an organized crime syndicate and you make up stuff. Own a lot of media outlets. You've done a very good job controlling narrative. You create the money supply. Like that's really an incredible power. I mean, while I don't like anything that they've done, I have a lot of respect for their success in creating this ridiculously oppressive system. However, at this time, I can no longer participate. So we're just going to like remove you from power because your time is up. But I still think that they were pretty clever. to set it up in the first place. But this is why I'm actually very optimistic that humanity is going to rise up above this. I think we were gifted something that we don't really understand the significance of, which is the internet. The fact that here we are having this conversation, 1,000 miles from each other. We're going to
Yes.
do this with thousands of other people. When I was a kid, you were stuck communicating with people that you physically knew, like that you hung out with at your job or at your school, and you'd had these silos of groups, right? Like it was really difficult to have widespread information shared unless it was through the media, which was why the cabals owned the media for so long, because they know how important it is. But the internet has made it impossible for them to block our connecting with each other, and we can now share information so quickly. So any of these like silly games, these matrix games, these cabal games, whatever you want to call them, like all the stuff that they try to do now, many of us, me included, we just kind of laugh at them. I'm like, nice try, but your gig is up. Like,
Exactly.
your time. If we
We
hadn't gotten it.
see you. It is just interesting that you mentioned you started with, hey, I found out about this. You read that book. I didn't know anything about what was up. I know there was something off until I started getting into the crypto space. I am originally from Puerto Rico, and I'm here in Texas. So like you said, the internet has not only enabled us to communicate, and I never thought it would be here in Texas, right? And be able to do things that we couldn't have done 10, 20, 30 years ago. Now, we got Fed now, which is not going that great, thank God. You're saying, tell me, it's like, why would they think that a lot of it, because not that many banks are participating, because the way that the banks do money is by holding our money, right? They don't want instant settlements. Am I right or not? Instant settlements, it basically is not what they want, because then they cannot hold the money and do whatever they want with the money if they have to settle it like that, right?
Right. So FedNow is the wholesale CBDC. It's replaced the old system of ACH payments, and where you had to have money sitting in every bank. So I think the banking system had a dilemma. They had one, they used to make money off the float, and that was called, when you take the money out of the account, they would lend it for a day or two, make interest on it. But that was kind of a thing that couldn't really last forever.
Mm-hmm.
They also have this issue where they have to have these Nostro Vostro accounts, and they have all this money that's required to be sitting,
all this currency, right?
Waiting to be used. And so they were like, all right, we like our ability to make money off the float, but we don't want to have to keep all this money in the Nostro Vostro accounts. Which is it? And I think they were resisting in the same way that, like, malls across the country resisted the e-commerce. Like, you're going to have industries that are going to be replaced by technology, and the banking system resisted as long as they could. I don't think FedNow is really that big of a deal. It's just going to be how the banks send money to other banks. So I actually know people who work at companies that have been building that, and they have been working on the back end of the banking systems forever. This is just like giving an upgrade to an older communication system. I think the question that becomes, though, is, will the Federal Reserve remain a third-party corporation that has a lot of power, or was it rolled under the Treasury in 2020 as part of the CARES Act? Meaning we kind of think we still have the Fed, but really now it's just a sort of neutralized division within the government, which is why a CBDC, this is why the semantics of that matter. CBDC sounds scary because of the word central bank. Well, what if the central bank was neutralized and now it was just a part of the Treasury, and it was no longer had this ability to do what it wants? Then functionally, it's really called the US Treasury digital currency, which is, we thought the dollar was that the whole time. So have we really are we in a situation where we're returning back to government issued money? And in this world of inflation, where globally, not even just in the US, people don't want to use the dollar because it doesn't buy you very much anymore. And when that collapses, people are not going to have any trust in fiat currencies. So the world is going to need to return to sound money as a way to reestablish trust in the money system. And the way to do that is by backing the money with gold and other valued assets. So what we just saw, that HSBC, which is a very large UK-based bank, is now in Hong Kong. They're the UK and Hong Kong have a very tight relationship. They're issuing digitized gold, tokenized gold to their bank customers, which means that's the gold standard. Like they're now issuing money that's backed by gold to a bank to their customers.
We need that. We need that here. Seriously.
I think it is here. We're just waiting for like what's silly and crazy is we just have to wait for like the press releases to come out. Like we could have a gold backed dollar now. I mean, there's quite a few people who believe that it was already switched. But how would you know? I mean, that's the thing is we have to wait until someone tells us. And they could have implemented this system a couple of years ago and they just haven't told us. We're sort of watching, inflation thing play out. I don't know the answers to that question. What I think though is gold is going to have a very significant role as money in the future. Now, you and I aren't going to walk around carrying gold coins because half the time we buy stuff online anyway or whatever. So how are you going to use, this is where the cash argument is a complicated one. People want to keep cash because they want privacy in transactions. Okay, but if you had privacy in transactions another way, sometimes cash is inconvenient if you're not in the same place as and the same thing with gold. Like I'm not going to bring my gold bar to the grocery store and be like, hey, chip off whatever you need. So using tokenized representation of those assets is going to be very important. And we're seeing that HSBC, one of the largest banks in the world, is now doing this with their clients. So we're there. I think we already know the Ripple has all these relationships with these companies.
Yes.
We know that the cross-border payments thing was their big focus. Now they've moved on to tokenization. Like things are happening. And I think I see the XRP community paying attention to the wrong things. All they really seem to do is look at the price of XRP as a indicator, because I think there's fear that the stuff that we know to be true and is happening, they're like, I'm not going to believe it. Because here's the other problem. Let's say XRP did go to $10,000 today. What are you going to do about that? Are you going to go sell your XRP for fiat? Now you're going to have a whole bunch of fiat. We just talked about how fiat's collapsing. Like
exactly. No, I would like to get a loan by a bank. Hopefully here in Texas, we have charter banks that can hold crypto and basically not sell it. That's what I would like to do. Not sell it.
What are you going to do with the loan?
Use the money. I mean, again, a lot of us are trying to understand how do we keep this if it's going to be 10,000 at the beginning and it goes to $1 million, and let's say that all the money flows or 50% of all the money in the world flows to the blockchain, like like all the schematics that you guys did, all the simulations, selling it will be a waste. Like you said, it's like selling it for trash, right? So how do you make the money without selling it, right? Maybe AMM, I don't know.
So we've been given this gift. I think people miss this. Now I know that it has been a tough couple of years, and a lot of people are experiencing financial hardships because of this, organized crime government that we have, who's been trying to harm everybody into accepting their communist feudalism policies. But back to XRP though, if XRP were $10,000 today, it would create a whole new problem, which is now you've got to sell for some fiat that's losing its value, and your ability to buy more XRP is going to be a lot harder.
Exactly.
I mean, if you want to be stockpiling, we've had a couple of years to do that. The day we wake up and it's $10,000, if that were to happen, it's going to be a lot harder to continue stockpiling. Now you might say, well, I don't need to because now it's worth all this money, but it's worth all that much because we still think in dollars. Like
exactly.
if the dollar hyperinflates, it's going to make XRP look like it's worth a lot, but it's only perception.
Exactly. That's what one of my friends said. He said, Mari, the price of XRP is not the price of XRP. It's the value of the fiat currency is so bad that it seems like it's a lot, but it's not. A XRP for $10,000 is really nothing if you think about it, because we know that a dollar is not worth a dollar with inflation. So yeah, again, like you're saying, a lot of people are focusing on the wrong thing. But again, it's just like, I bet that if it happened today, most people will sell their stuff because they don't understand. Again, they don't know what they hold. They don't know where we're going. They don't have the big picture of where we're going. And so, I couldn't blame them. But again,
Right. I think that's going to happen too, if we're in a situation where we see adoption by a couple of large entities, excitement, the press hype follows, the markets, and people start buying into XRP because of that. A whole bunch of people who've been holding for many years and got in very early, they're going to be like, sweet, I'm out, I'm taking profits. They're going to take their profits in dollars. Now, smart ones will go and build businesses and buy other types of assets to diversify. But a lot of people are going to go and buy like consumer goods and have these like crazy parties and trips, which, do whatever you want. But you'd realize that if that had happened years ago, you probably would have spent the money and now you'd have no money again. So I appreciate that, like, we're still waiting for global adoption. And during this time, I can still accumulate more, on a sort of dollar cost averaging regular schedule. I'm not trying to dismiss the harm that was caused by the US government by suing Ripple, or the fact that this has been dragging out and there's a lot of frustration and people are just ready for like whatever's going to happen. Like that energy, I totally understand. But just be careful about wishing for XRP to be high in value before we fix the fiat currency problem, because then you're going to end up selling into this trashy thing. That's the real shit coin, right? Is the dollar. You're going to have a bunch of this shit coin that's not worth a lot. And you'll wish I had been able to keep my XRP for longer.
Again, I totally agree with that. Like seriously, it will be better for somebody to buy, here in Texas, I don't know, and depends on the state. I can go and buy a house, right? Buy something real, right? It's if instead of just selling it, right? So there's people that have a plan. And again, people need to think about this stuff, because I think the majority of the people are just going to sell, right?
Yeah. We're all traveling our own journey. I've also learned, like, it's not I do a lot of content and educating people, but I don't consider it my responsibility to force people to agree with me or understand something that they are resistant to understanding. So I put stuff out there. I'll explain what the stuff that I've learned. I do a lot of teaching, kind of infographic-y threads and that kind of thing. If people find them valuable, great. If you don't, or you think you want to argue about it, like, there's probably a more productive use of your time than that. And so there are going to be people who sell, and a lot of it's going to be driven by fear, and that they've been waiting a long time and they maybe don't understand the macroeconomic political stuff that we talked about earlier. That's unfortunate for them, but we all kind of walk our own path, and that's their mistake to make.
Definitely. We walk alone. Oh my God. This has been amazing. I really, really thank you for being here with us, and like a message to the XRP community about what is important and what is at stake.
So if you've been kind of following this narrative about the shift in the political system, the shift in the money system, why ETHgate happened, like, why was slowing down Ripple so important that they went through to this length to do it? And monitoring the changes in the tokenization narrative that, like, the Larry Finks of the world are doing, you can see that all the stuff we talked about happening a couple years ago, like, it's happening. Like, I'm excited. All this stuff, like, XRP is going to have this big role. Like, we've just seen a lot of confirmation. And the price thing will happen, but all the markers we were looking for, like, they're getting checked off the list. So I'm very optimistic. And look for those types of things before you obsess over. First of all, you're obsessing over the market price on markets that aren't really what it's going to be used for. Like, you're looking at a Coinbase and a, whatever, CoinGecko type of exchange, where the big institutions that are going to be using this, that's not how they're buying and selling. They have their own markets. And there are these, over-the-counter markets in every financial products industry. So I think retail needs to sort of let go of this thing that our voice is critical in this particular issue, which is the macro shift away from the dollar system, which is corrupt, to something that is more fair, like globally. So I feel like we often are talking about the wrong thing, where we're in this exciting period in humanity. We're watching this organized crime syndicate collapse, and their product, the dollar that they use to manipulate all of us, is on its way out. And we are moving into a really beautiful, prosperous period where we have a level playing field. When you can see all the signs of that, like, it helps you just be excited about enjoying today and stop obsessing over the price of XRP.
Man, I couldn't end that better. So hopefully you can come here one another time. So see you guys later.
All right.